start with a word of prayer. God, thank you for the privilege of having this conference, and all the men and women that were able to sacrifice a little bit of time and come and be part of this. Lord, we're very grateful. We pray that we're a blessing here at the college, that the students that have volunteered and the students that have interacted, that they've been an encouragement and that they've been impacted by the lives of those that are here. Lord, please bless this session, help it to be coherent, make sense, and be helpful to people. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, I think most of us have met, but my background, just to give a little bit of background, is yes, I am the chair of the organizational leadership program. I have a little bit of business background. So I was active duty Air Force for 5 years. Then I went to college on the GI Bill. Then I went to seminary, and the seminary I went to was night school, and the head of the seminary required all seminary students to get a full-time secular job. So he didn't want someone that had, in high school worked for a deacon mowing yards and then worked on campus in Christian college and then goes to seminary and becomes a youth pastor. He wanted all the seminarians to have some experience in the secular world so they could relate to the people in the pew and they could also support their family. And so I started out selling air conditioning for my wife's uncle who owned an air conditioning company in Kansas City. And then after that, I moved on to work for a Fortune 500 company, ADP, big payroll company, and got to work for them as a regional sales guy for a while. And then I ended up becoming the general manager for a small logistics company. So I had a little bit of business experience after my Air Force experience before I went into ministry. And then in my ministry, 15 of the 17 years of my ministry was spent in Guam, USA. And although Guam is a very small place, so it's the equivalent of a small town, not like Utah small town, but like Iowa small town. So 150, 180,000 people, 50,000 or so military there, Navy and Air Force primarily, and then a lot of Asian cultures and local cultures. So I got to be part of that ministry. I started out as an assistant pastor, and the roles changed and grew over the years. And my final title there when I left there 2 years ago was executive pastor. Just so you have some perspective, this is not bragging at all because it's the Lord's ministry. We had about 1,000 students in our school, so full-time Harvest Christian Academy. When I left, I think we had almost 700 people on Sundays at church. We had a little Bible college. We had gotten it up to about 100. Then we realized that 100 was too many, so we scaled that back to about 65 to 75 Micronesian college students. We had an FM radio station, and many of these things were started by men who had gone before us and really had a vision, and we were able just to, jump on this moving train and see what God was going to do. But we did start a full-service coffee shop there, called it Hebrews. That was actually Marty Heron's name for it. I thought it was too corny, but he, for every one vote I had, he had like 100. So he got the name Hebrews, but everyone loves it actually. And all the proceeds went to missions projects. So it was nice having a full service coffee shop on a campus where you have 1,000 students coming in and you don't have to pay rent because we're putting it on our own campus. So we had a lot of proceeds we were able to send to missions projects. And then something we started in my last 6 years there was we started a nonprofit for foster care ministry. And I got to be the president of that board for 5 years, and I'm still a board member at large with that Harvest House, and got to place foster children in Christian homes monthly, it seemed like the whole time we were there. So that's a little bit of my experience. I also got my master's degree in organizational leadership. I have a master's in pastoral studies and then a master's degree in organizational leadership, and I've just always enjoyed leadership. It seemed like at Harvest, I always gravitated towards the things, or the projects were always given to me that were, not as much traditional pastoral, what you'd think of. So I like speaking, and I like preaching, and I like counseling a little bit. I probably have a little ADD. I don't like doing just one thing all the time, but I really do like starting new things and making them viable. Whether that's a new ministry outreach or a program. We did a couple big building projects there, and I enjoy all of that. I like all that. I'm not a high detail person, so it doesn't stress me out too much because I just don't know what I'm missing out on. So, and always surrounded by good team members. So just had the privilege to do so many different things. So on your table, because it is the post-lunch and because I am a teacher now, so I have to think like a teacher, everyone's going to doze off anyway. So I want you to do something. On the world's largest sticky note, which is what I put on your table, I need you to write two things. And when you're done writing those, I need you to bring them up and stick them on this table right here. The top, I want you to write what industry you're involved in. What industry you're involved in. Okay. And at the bottom, I want you to write one thing that has changed in the last 18 months for your customers or clients. So the top, what industry are you involved in? And the bottom, give me just one thing that has changed in the last 18 months for your customers or clients. And when you have that, just bring it on up here and stick it on the table. And if you see something that has a similar answer as yours, put your sticky note on top of theirs. So if you think it's kind of in the same vein as one thing that has changed for your customer or clients, put it on top of another sticky note. So the benefit is if you get yours done quick, you don't have to think, you just put it up here. If you're the last one and you have something really deep, you might have to kind of do a little sorting. So when you've got that done, just bring it up, put it on the table here. I'm really curious to see your responses. And you have about 45 seconds. What one thing has changed for your customers or clients in the last 18 months? Just one. You maybe got hundreds of things that have changed, but one thing. Might be hard to narrow it down to just one thing. All right. Last few coming up here. I like doing these exercises because it gets people moving, but it also helps you sometimes see some common things, or it might just open your eyes to what other people, what their perspective is on something. So real estate, accounting, construction, trucking, manufacturing, hospitality, tourism, education, professional business consultant. So what we have here under the real estate side, one of the things changed, people are not in their offices. That's a big deal in this area. Downtown Des Moines is all giant businesses that had thousands of employees in these high-rise buildings, and now they're struggling to get people to come back, and so they have a lot of vacancy down there. They're talking about what to do with that. Accounting, government programs and requirements. You hear a lot about that. I see a lot of that in the Wall Street Journal, and I kind of glaze over it because I don't understand a lot of it. Trucking, supplies, back orders, holdups. I've heard of in the industry where my wife works in, similar to what Paul does, they have container ships sitting in ports and you don't have enough truck drivers to offload the containers and transport. And that's a big issue here in the Midwest. Construction, material availability. At lunch, some of the guys were talking about the crazy lumber market, where basically there was a run on lumber. Now Menards has lumber stacked to the ceiling. And it seems like they can't get rid of it. Prices drop. Rising prices in manufacturing. That's something that probably has a direct relationship to all these other things that have been talked about today. Hospitality, tourism. More people want to explore the outdoors. So some hospitality industry is the hardest hit. But if you're in the outdoors hospitality industry, it sounds like it's maybe a little bit of a boon for you guys. And then finally, education, professional business growth, employee pool, finding good employees. Right now, it's a great time to be a college student looking for a job in Ankeny, Iowa, because every single place in town is hiring and every single place is paying no less than $11, unless you work on campus. Sorry, Kaylin. She just did a good job on campus. So, but everywhere is hiring $11 an hour, a lot of them 13. If you're gonna take a full-time job, even hourly, right out, you can still be 17 years old. You get a $300, $500 signing bonus. A lot of places here, they just cannot find enough workers. And Ankeny is unique. The Chamber of Commerce, I'm very involved in the chamber here. They talk about how, so the type of jobs that we have here are the kind of jobs where, people live in other areas and drive in hourly work. And then the people that live here get in their cars and drive to other suburbs, bigger salary jobs. And it's just kind of the way our little ecosystem is here in this area. But I was given the topic, encouraging your customers in challenging times. And when I first got the topic, I was scratching my head like, okay, so what do you do besides, dropping your prices? That was kind of tongue in cheek earlier. Dropping your prices, give everything away. That'll sure encourage them. But that type of transactional thinking. I think you have to go way deeper than that. And so there's such a broad range of industries here. I'm not going to give you a bunch of trite, like here's 10 easy steps, or here's one thing that'll solve all the things. So I'm going to give some principles. I'm going to give you a few ideas that are almost universal, for any industry, like types of tools you could use, some practical things. So this is a relatively practical session to try and help get you thinking about this, because I think this is possible. And I think it is more than just the transactional relationship of dropping prices and things like that. So why do they need it? What do you do and how do you do it? And if you ever go by my office, few of you guys have been by my office. My office looks like a murder mystery, like someone's trying to solve a crime scene, or like, catch a thief. I have whiteboard papers, those big tear off sheets that I've thought about stuff. And so I was trying to flow, what are the essential things the things that I've talked to business leaders about, business owners about in the last 2 years since I've been here. I've probably talked to well over 100 business leaders, business owners, ministry leaders, or business, people that are making decisions in businesses. And it's usually over a cup of coffee. I had 34 guest speakers last semester in my classes, which is harder than just teaching the classes myself. Actually, it's like running a cruise ship. It's people coming and going, but getting to interact with people and hear about what's going on in their industries, their businesses, and getting to just be friends with people and stuff, being involved in the Chamber of Commerce and some other activities like that have really helped. And it's expanded my thinking a lot. That kind of is underneath all of this. So this is not just something that I just, pulled out of a hat. I use a couple different resources, which I'll give credit. Things, some of them are really current, like just this last week or last couple of weeks. And so I'll share that as well. Let's start off with a biblical premise here, Matthew 22:37 through 40. And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. So obviously, we need to love God completely. And then second is like to it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So if we're looking for a reason, a biblical reason to try to encourage our customers, okay, the whole concept of encouraging your customers, here's a reason right here. We're going to love our neighbors as ourselves. So we still have to do what business does, right? So we create a service or a product, we exchange that for, money or some type of resource. That still happens, right? But is there a way to bring some type of thinking into it that goes above and beyond just the bottom line? And I think there is. Different industries have to apply this differently, but I think you can still apply this scripture to all of it. New commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I've loved you. You also are to love one another. I believe this is talking believers between believers, but the principle is still there. So we need to love others. So I think there's a biblical reason to explore this topic. So here's from McKinsey and Company. Do any of you do you subscribe to McKinsey and Company reports? I would highly recommend it. It's good stuff. I mean, they put, this is one that I got, adapting customer experience in the time of coronavirus. They're basically a research firm that pulls together all kinds of good stats, and they make really good graphics for it. And it helps inform me when I'm teaching classes on topics that I really, they're not in my wheelhouse. And this is one of the quotes from April. So this is going to kind of show you over that last 18 months, there has been a little bit of a shift. So if I was given the same exact thing this time last year when we had to cancel it, the application might have been a little different. The principles would have been the same. Particularly in times of crisis, a customer's interaction with a company can trigger an immediate and lingering effect on his or her sense of trust and loyalty. as millions are furloughed and retreat into isolation. A primary barometer of their customer experience will be how the businesses they frequent and depend upon deliver experiences and service that meets their new needs with empathy, care, and concern. I mean, bottom line, it makes a big impression on that customer, that client during those critical times. So, some transactions in business happen, very passively. You're not even thinking actively. You walk in, you put the thing on the counter, you say, thank you, whatever. You put your card in, you pull your card out, no receipt, you go, and you're gone. Or you're buying something online, or you have a service being performed, or there's manufacturing happening behind the scenes. You're not even connected to it. You're like multiple steps away. But anything that an organization can do to provide an experience that is positive during a critical time is going to make a lasting impression. Another thing here. So this is back around that same time. The Brookings Institute, the Hamilton Project, put out basically share of households that did not pay or that deferred paying rent a little over a year ago. Iowa was in the lowest group there. But just to think about so many millions and millions of people that were not paying the rent on time because of economic factors due to coronavirus. I'm not going to go real deep into this. This doesn't necessarily demand analysis, but customers over the last 18 months paying a lot more for stuff. Customers paying more for 85% have been paying more for groceries since COVID-19. 75% paying more for household goods since COVID-19. Whole list of stuff here. Americans, what they think they're paying more for, they believe they're paying more for meat and eggs and milk, and cleaning supplies, paper products, and their utilities. And so that's what people at least feel like they're paying more for. The second wave concerns, which actually, we're already thoroughly into the second wave, but costs and shortages, 87% are worried the second wave will lead to grocery shortages. I don't know if that actually turned out to be that true, but that was on the leading edge of this over this last year. 86% worried the second wave will lead to higher food prices. Stocking up, 31% say they only have enough food stocked up for the last 2 weeks or less, and 67% feel they have enough food stocked up in case of a shortage. So, and there's all, stress eating in the pandemic. Basically, there's just so much that people's budgets have changed. Shopping attitudes and habits, 77% believe grocery shopping will change permanently due to COVID-19. 75% feel uncomfortable when shopping at a grocery store. 69% have used grocery delivery or pickup for the first time since COVID-19. How many of you have used grocery delivery or pickup maybe for the first time? Okay, yeah. We literally every day now, I look and see which Amazon package is on the step, right? That was not a thing. It's hard to remember because it becomes such a part of life. But 2 years ago, if I ordered something on Amazon, my wife would be like, what did you order? She's thinking I'm like impulse buying some, new pair of sneakers or some corny thing, and something we don't need basically. Now it's every day, just, she just goes out and brings in the Amazon stuff every day. It's just not even a consideration. 46% say they won't shop at a store that doesn't have a mask policy. Now, I don't think this is polling people in Iowa because we probably have a smaller percentage than that. But they surveyed like over 2,000 people nationwide on that survey. Deloitte Insights, this is fresh, 19th August 2021. Americans' anxiety level picked up slightly in July. 33% of respondents in Deloitte's latest survey say that they were more anxious during the current week than the one before. This is the highest reading since early March. So over this couple months, anxiety's been climbing into the summer. 51% of respondents reported being worried about their own physical well-being, and 57% reported being still concerned about the health of their family and those in their immediate circle. This is what our customers, our clientele, what they're going through. The uptick in anxiety is likely due to two factors. First, the rise of COVID-19 positive cases due to the spread of the Delta variant likely had some people worried. Second, financial stress has been edging up as fiscal support for those economically affected by the pandemic eases. And this is just Deloitte's analysis of it. With the overall pandemic situation much better than a year ago, people are opting to spend more on certain services and non-durable goods they likely avoided last year. So, you know, travel, things like that seems to have picked up a little bit. Although right at the end there, some people might have been backing off. So these are just different things that are affecting the way our customers think. So I'm just trying to paint a little bit of a picture here. I'm not going to read all these. This is from University of New Hampshire, Carsey School of Public Policy. Although job growth continued to accelerate, all but 2 states still have fewer payroll jobs than in February 2020. So in the last year and a half, even though things are looking a lot better, you still have almost all the states in the United States still do have less people, you know, with traditional jobs. I don't know if they say payroll jobs because they're trying to eliminate like side gigs and the whole gig economy and stuff like that. But unemployment, highest unemployment rates were in July. In July were Nevada, New Mexico, New York, California, Nebraska had the lowest at 2.3. 35 states still had smaller economies than they did pre-pandemic when this survey was taken this summer, I believe. So bottom line, it's been a rough year on businesses and consumers. I think that I didn't even need to prove that. We all just know that, right? So not every business has been affected negatively. Again, it has been a boom for some, or a bubble maybe. So where my wife works here at the Stone Shop, they have had unprecedented number of people remodeling their kitchens. I don't know if that's been your experience, Paul, but off the charts. And so anecdotally, I did a little moonlighting there this summer. So I'd ask people, so why are you doing it? They didn't travel. So the money they would have spent on travel, they're sitting at home. They're sitting at home looking at that same old countertop that's been there for 10 years. And one of the spouses is like, we've been saying we're going to do this. Look at that ugly thing. Let's just do it. And so they have that. And then an infusion for many people of at least a little bit of stimulus money, you know, kind of those, and, you know, easy to get credit, things like that. People are just fixing up stuff. And so it's been a boom for that part of the economy, but it has been overall, when we're talking about the customer side, it has been rough. So here's some things that you could do. And I think, Mike, you talked about this a little bit, but there are 2 things I would propose on the what side, what you could do. One, revisit your mission statement and revisit your value proposition. And I'll describe these here, but I believe that if you are trying to do what this session is titled, encourage your customers, I think these would be 2 things that they're not that hard, but they are intentional. They don't happen passively, okay? So by mission statement, let's look at that first here. Your mission statement, ask yourself a couple questions. First off, when's the last time you reviewed your mission statement? So it was neat last night. Mike and I were at the same table with Chris, and Chris said, oh, they just revisited their mission statement and I had already written this, just so you know. So I did not steal that idea, but I'm like, okay, yes, people are actually doing that. It's a perfect time to revisit your mission statement. Because sometimes when things are just rolling along, mission statement, because it is monolithic a lot of times and it's already engraved in the brass plaque, we might not revisit it. And I'm not proposing rewriting it totally. Definitely go back to it. Not only revisit it, but ask yourself, does this match our current and future reality? You know, when you write your mission statements on the front end, and although your mission might not technically change, there might be some nuances that you want to consider because the world has changed so much. Doesn't mean you're changing your mission. You know, Faith Baptist Bible College is not changing its mission, it's taking the word to the world. But there are some things missionally, at least, that they're saying, okay, if you would have asked 5 years ago, should we offer Bible classes online, most people would have been resistant, because if they're just thinking about the class environment, right? If they're not thinking about the revenue and things, but just the class environment, maybe resistant because it's not the same experience. You don't get the one-on-one discipleship opportunities. You don't get to be up close with the students. You know, we don't get to have them here on campus so we can shape their whole life. Well, the world has changed. And so even though those things were true and still are true, it is true now that we are doing online education, and we have to say, okay, so how can we fulfill our mission within that new paradigm? Could your mission statement be enhanced? And maybe it's not your mission statement that maybe it's like some of your, your, something you put into that Magna Carta of your organization. So maybe it's an addendum. We had to do this in church ministry. Churches have to do this. They write their constitution and bylaws in 1976. And it was, kind of a standard, these 10 things. But then the world has changed. They've had to add things, addendums to them. And so you might need to enhance what your mission statement says to accurately depict, what you're looking at now and what you're planning for the future. And then really the big question is, are you on mission? So a couple of years ago, when I was at Harvest, we would come back to the States. One of my original connections to here came here to recruit school teachers to go to Guam, school teachers and operational staff. And I would try and visit other organizations. I love seeing how organizations run. And so I would visit foster homes and nonprofits and other schools, even schools we weren't recruiting from. And I'd heard about College of the Ozarks. Have all of you heard of College of the Ozarks? Hard Work University down in Branson. Amazing place, really awesome. I got to spend time with the executive vice president. He gave me like 3 hours of his time and let me meet with a bunch of their staff, because we had this little college in Guam for Micronesian students. And basically each student, they come with no money. And so they would work 4 hours a day and they go to class 4 hours a day. But it was kind of like being a dad on Father's Day, like how you give your kid $20, they buy you a tie and give you the tie back, and then they keep the change somehow. That was kind of how our college ran. So it was not in the black by any means. So we were looking for creative ways. Could we become a work college? We found out it's a lot harder to become that. Most of the ones that exist are grandfathered in, Evangel, College of the Ozarks. But when I met with them, one of the things that stuck with me, a lot of things stuck with me from there, but one of the things, he said that the president, who I did not get to meet, says this all the time. We must protect ourselves against mission drift. They use this term, mission drift. And now I've heard it in the business world a little bit now too, but the idea that you have a direction, you have that North Star that you're going after, you've said these are the things we're going to try and accomplish. And then over time, just by natural forces, you start to just drift off of that a little bit. And sometimes that leads to an organization getting really messed up. Sometimes it leads to an organization dying. So this is a great time when you're trying to think of how can I encourage my customers? Okay, are we still on mission? Like if we originally set out with whatever our enterprise is, if we set out to do the very best job for that client or that customer or that customer segmentation, are we still doing that? Or have we drifted away from that a little bit because of external forces? What can we do to get back on mission? So I think it's a great time to go back and revisit your mission. I think the other is to go back and revisit your value proposition. This is something that each organization, each business has to look at this on their own and see if this is worthwhile or not. But does your value proposition match the current and future needs of your customers? Right. So what you thought they needed back in the day when you originally kind of came up with your value proposition, if you wrote a business plan, if you had to get capital funding or anything like that, you probably have a big, thick business plan and there's a value proposition statement in there. Does it match? It might have matched what you thought you were getting yourself into, but now that everything's up and running and now you look at the last 18 months, okay, is this still accurate? Or could it be touched up or added to or whatever? Have you made adjustments that need to be reflected in your value proposition? Are you doing something totally new that really isn't reflected in that? Maybe you could go back in the revisiting process and add that in. Has your ideal customer changed or has their persona changed? And these are different terms that I'm not a full-blown marketing guy. I like that world and I like understanding that. I like the whole idea of design thinking and helping organizations refine some of these things. But who you thought your ideal customer was back when you started, is that still accurate? Is that ideal customer? Is their persona? Is that, are you still aiming for that same target? Or has, because the world has changed, has that persona changed as well? Well, have you ever went back and told everyone that it changed? Hey, you know what? We were aiming for, 18 to 24-year-old young ladies, but you know, they've all grown up with whatever we do. And so now we're aiming for, you know, mid to late 20, you know, young moms or something. I don't know. I mean, I can't apply to every industry here because they're so diverse, but if the persona of that ideal customer has changed, maybe you need to go back and revisit that, have a discussion with the people that are making decisions in your organization to make sure that that everyone's still aiming for the same thing. Because if someone's still aiming for the old ideal customer, but you actually have a new ideal customer, somewhere along the way, someone's got to talk about that. Let me give you a little tool. This is just a simple little tool I use with my students, but if you're to take what your customer segmentation is and your value proposition and you kind of put them side by side, this is a great tool. And you can find this anywhere. This is called a value proposition canvas. So this is a subset of the business model canvas. So if you want to kind of outline your organization really well, the business model canvas is an awesome tool. The value proposition canvas helps you identify your value proposition better. This here just talks about what's your customer profile. Of course, when you're looking at your customer profile, looking at, you know, what are their pain points? What are they trying to gain? And what jobs do they need to accomplish? Your value proposition usually reflects, you know, the answer to these things. What's your pain reliever? You're trying to relieve their pain. How are you going to create gain for them? And what product or service is going to help them accomplish a job? So just a tool, but I would recommend if you've never looked at a value proposition canvas or a business model canvas, they're really good kind of graphic tools to help you kind of go back and tweak it. It might be a good thing to have as a discussion with your leadership. So that was the what. Let's talk about the how. I think there's 3 things you can do in how to encourage your customers. And again, these are not 10 quick tips because there's no way to encourage to have a parallel between accounting and trucking, you know, and business coach and consultant. They're not parallel industries. There are going to be some parallel principles. So, but these principles, I think, apply to every industry. So let's just talk about these real quick. First off, empathize. And the term empathy is used a lot. I think ever since Stephen Covey and his 7 habits, you know, empathy is one of his 7 habits, you know, seek first to understand before you're understood. Those are great principles. Empathy, though, there's a whole new study on what is toxic empathy and stuff like that, where people over-identify with someone that's having problems and stuff. So let's just kind of keep this in the business realm. To empathize with whoever your customer or client is, there's 3 parts of empathy. Affective, which is experiencing, you know, their emotions and moods. You're kind of mirroring it. Cognitive empathy is understanding. So you're experiencing it, you're understanding it. And behavioral empathy is engaging in verbal, nonverbal behaviors to demonstrate cognitive or affective empathy. So you put it all together, it's the ability to put yourself in someone else's situation, share their feelings and thoughts as if you're experiencing something similar, and behave accordingly. That right there, no matter what industry you're in, you should probably make that a regular practice where you're putting yourself in the shoes of whoever your client or customer is, because that's going to help you know what would encourage them. Okay, what would help them. So empathy. I think also, well, right here, the World Economic Forum looked at all these highly empathetic companies, and these are things that they said that they did. They care about their cultures. They insist on transparency. They share their brand's backstory. Their social media practices reflect strong empathy. They see customer complaints as opportunities for insight, and they make ethics a priority. So this is a secular study of secular companies and how they, in a secular way, apply empathy. As a Christian organization or as a Christian leader in an organization, we should be able to do a great job at this, right? Because we're loving others the way, you know, we would want to be loved. We're treating them, you know, as God's creation. We're trying to like meet a need. So empathy. Next, listen. And this is just very quick. Some of you have spent a lot more time than I have in the world of web design and applications, technology. So I'm not a technology guy. I have an associate's in electronic technologies, but it's from 1994. 1994, electronic technologies were resistors, transistors, capacitors, you know, soldering on circuit boards. it was not what it was. Wide area networks. I mean, it was a whole different ballgame. So, but the little bit I do know is when you're talking about like designing new software, you're designing websites, everyone's always looking for what's the user's experience. So how are they going to interact with whatever you're offering? So this is usually, UX is usually talking about the technology side, but it can be applied to every organization. But the user experience, UX, and you can get degrees and certifications and all that. Customer experience, CX, is all the interactions a person has with your brand. Okay, so it's bigger than just UX. And so what we have to be careful of is not to be such a technician about what we offer, that we're only focused on, you know, that one user interface. But we have to step back and look at the broader whole experience of the customer with whatever it is we're offering, product or service. So looking at CX over UX, and this just gives an illustration of that. So good digital UX offers, you know, the ability to kind of get information from a website, for example. That would be user, kind of their interface with you, their experience, complete a desired task with these, search web pages with these. That's how they use UX. CX gives a customer the ability to have a pleasant, professional, helpful interaction with the organization, feel generally positive about the overall experience. So it's a little more qualitative and a little less quantitative. And it's very, basically, this is a good illustration. So if you're familiar with UX a little bit, it's kind of a subset. It's totally within CX. CX is just bigger. So when it comes to listening, remember, feedback's not your enemy. You know, you can get, every organization, ministries are famous for this. We kind of get rolling and we really think we got a handle on it. And so we don't stop to take feedback very often. Now, some of your industries, feedback is just part of the industry. If you don't install it right, they are going to call you and give you feedback, and you're going to go back out and fix it, right? There's some industries where, okay, the numbers don't, you're going to get feedback. Other industries, though, you kind of just launch it out there, and then a lot of times you don't care to go back in. You don't really want to hear sometimes, but feedback is not your enemy, it's your friend. Complaints and criticisms are not always insults. So when an organization, a business, a ministry is trying to put themselves in the shoes of the customer and think about them, and we hear something negative, even something that maybe isn't said the right way. They didn't say pretty please with it, you know, they said it with an angry voice, whatever. Still, we don't have to take it as an insult. We don't have to make it this personal thing. We say, okay, so out of this, is there any truth in here that we could apply that'll help us better meet the need of the customer or client later on? Opportunities can be mined from pain points. So mined, like, you know, dug out of pain points. So sometimes we'll hear something coming back from someone we're trying to serve, and we can turn that into an opportunity. I mean, if we're hearing back from someone that this just did not work the way they thought, well, we can either say, well, they're just dumb, or we can say, what could we do to make it work the next time they use this, or they buy this, or they, you know, whatever. So just mining opportunities, and then map your customer experiences. And this is just a quick one. Again, I don't know, have any of you ever done a customer journey map? Have you guys ever done that before? So it's very simple. I'll take exactly 2 minutes to do it. But let's say that your business was a coffee shop. So someone comes into the parking lot, and then they come to the front door, and then they come to the counter, and then they talk to the person, and then they pay, and then they drink, you know, and then there's seating and all this stuff. So there's all different aspects to journey mapping. So this is just one layer. This is called this is the touch point side. Everywhere, churches can do this, businesses can do this. Anytime you have an interface with customers, you could work on this. But what you do is you say, okay, these are all different touch points, and I want to map out how we're doing, because I want to have happier, more satisfied customers. So you can do this a lot of different ways. You can literally talk to people and just do a, you know, face-to-face, which is very effective. You can do a survey. You can have some kind of tool on site. I don't know if you've been into a Goodwill Industries thrift store. They have like a little thing and you can just hit like, there's like 5 different faces on there, like all the way from smiley to angry, and you just tap it on your way out. They mine all that data to see what kind of response they're getting. So a journey map, let's say you had 10 people come in, and what they do is, let's say that this is 5, which is an awesome experience, and this is 1. And they're going to mark somewhere on here, okay, in the parking lot, you know what? They couldn't find parking. They're down here. It wasn't very good. They got to the door, though. It was easy. They found it. Sign was good. They came to the counter, super friendly worker, you know. Worker asked how their day was going. It was great. But when they paid, the card machine didn't work too well. They got the drink. Name was spelled wrong. Must be Starbucks. So your journey map gives you a way to quantitatively take something that normally is qualitative, something that's just a feeling, and now you have a quantitative way to say, okay, if we're going to make a better customer experience, what would we go after first? Well, if you didn't have any data, right? Dave mentioned this in his session. You don't have any data. You're just going off your gut feeling. You might say, hey, you know what we need to do? We need to teach our people at the front counter a new script, you know, because we've been at these other coffee shops and they say everything a certain way, and we go to Chick-fil-A and they say, how may I serve you? So and you might put a lot of time into, you know, creating a solution in search of a problem. Instead, you look at this, and let's say you did 10 of them, and the majority, the parking lot, seems to be the big issue. It gives you a way to address a customer experience thing where you actually have data to back it up. So journey maps are an easy way, kind of low-hanging fruit for you to engage with your customers and enhance the experience, and this is going to encourage them, right? The last one is adapt. Commit to making meaningful changes to encourage your customers, okay? And there's all different ones, and this one here, this McKinsey report right here gave a couple of these. This was like a year ago, so this is leading into the pandemic. A lot of businesses that never, ever considered doing things differently because they were killing it with the way they were doing it, had to start looking for digital options. They had to start looking for home delivery options. They had to start looking for touch-free options. Who would have thought touch-free? I mean, it makes sense now that, you know, I've gotten pink eye 10 times from, you know, using keypads, but never thought about before. Now, touch-free. Hey, I'd like to. I never tapped my credit card. It's always had those little Wi-Fi bars on it. Never tapped it until this last year. Now I do it every chance I get, just because I can. Something that McKinsey report recommends, and I've heard others talk about this, but getting rapid research and real-time pulse information, employee input, agile innovation. These are things where you're trying to get good information back as quick as you can. You want to get as good information back as quick as you can. Things change so quickly. You do a survey now, it takes you a couple months to process it, a couple months before you have a meeting. It doesn't make the agenda until, you know, next winter. It's too late. You need to act on it quicker, get information from your people, dedicate resources to address real needs, invest in your customer community for all the best reasons, not just to look good, but like what was said even in the panel, getting involved in community because that's what Christians should do. I've really been blessed. One of the guys running for mayor here, I said, Mark, what would you recommend? I want to get involved in the community. I've heard about civic involvement. I've never had the opportunity before, but I love this community. And I just love this community and I want to do something, but I'm involved in the chamber, but I'm really not a good ambassador. You know, I'm not going to go to every ribbon cutting. He said, Jared, if I could do, he had been on planning and zoning, worst committee ever, all negative, right? People hate you after that. He said, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would get on the Parks and Recreation Board. He said, because it's all positive. They meet with the community. They meet once a month. They have ice cream socials in the neighborhoods. We have 34 parks and everything's exploding for positive here in Ankeny. You can put your name in. Someone just passed away, actually. So I put in my name. I didn't hear back for 2 months. Then I got a call from the director of Parks and Rec. And I'm new to the community. So he was a little leery. He's like, you know, Jared, usually we have people who have been here longer, but you have been around and maybe we need some fresh blood. Would you be willing to have coffee with the mayor? Absolutely. So I got to have coffee with the mayor and talk to him. He kind of expressed the same thing. I didn't know if they were going to put me on the park board or not. They called me a couple days later. Jared, would you like to be on the park board? And so I get to be on the Parks and Recreation Board. What a blessing. I've met 5 or 6 new people that I probably would never, ever cross paths with, but they're really my neighbors. They're in my own little community and I get to make a difference for something good. So investing in my community, they're not my customers, but as a business, you just have that much more leverage to invest in your community. So that could be encouraging individuals in your organization to invest in the community, or it could be you could come up with a way to come up with a corporate, way to invest in the community, but something, and doing it for the best reasons. There are a lot of companies that greenwash things. They say, oh, we're going green. They get called out for this all the time. Walmart installed, so many solar panels on one of their stores, whatever. Then you find out it was worse environmentally than, if they would have just stayed electric. They just did it because they wanted to be perceived as green. We don't, as Christians, we don't need to greenwash anything. We should do things for the right reasons, of course. This is an example of, just real quick as we wrap up. I don't know if it's that encouraging. It was a business opportunity that people took advantage of, but food delivery businesses from 2018 to 2021, off the charts. And they adapted, they listened to what the customers wanted, they empathized. And it has really, it'll be a long-term study on, taking advantage of new opportunities and stuff like that. So, just to wrap it up, why? Your testimony, because you love other people and the need is real. Your customers need encouragement. You don't even need to see the statistics or read the paper to know that you have customers that need encouragement. What should you do? Revisit your mission. Are you on track? And revisit your value proposition. Does it line up? And then finally, how? Empathize, listen, and adapt. These are all things that you can do. And it doesn't really matter what the industry, you have to come up with your own applications. But every one of these, it does take some intentionality. None of these are going to happen passively. 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether therefore you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. I think we can address the needs of our customers and clientele to the glory of God, and God will bless it, I guarantee. Thank you. That's it.